Sonic may be afraid of orca whales. One of the most iconic aspects of the first mainline 3D Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, is the opening scene in Emerald Coast. Crystal blue waters and sunny skies and a beautiful coastline until a giant orca whale destroys the entire boardwalk and chases after you trying to kill you. Another nod to this iconic scene was also made in Sonic 06, where Sonic runs away from an orca whale, and it seems like these are traumatic experiences for him. As in IDW issue 84, something is hitting their wagon and Sonic says he really hopes that it isn't an orca, implying that he's scared, but also it's clearly a reference to the adventure games. Despite most of the real-world locations being fictionalized in the Sonic universe, Japan is actually mentioned in one of the games. To understand what I mean by this, you have to look no further than Sonic Unleashed. For example, Greece is called Apados and so on and so forth. But in Shadow the Hedgehog, there is dialogue that says, "Mr. President, you're late for your tea time with the Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan," implying that within the Sonic universe, Japan is actually a real location. There's an unreleased Game Boy Advance port of Sonic Riders. You know, when I think of GBA kart racers, the first thing that comes to mind is Mario Kart Super Circuit, which is kind of like a 3D-ish type game, right? You may have not known this, but the 2006 spin-off racing game called Sonic Riders was allegedly going to be made for the Game Boy Advance, and it actually made some pretty significant progress in development. When the game was being developed, one of the people working on it said that they were doing a GBA port and it was running on a pretty tight schedule, and when Sega of Japan saw the game, they insisted that they added more 3D to it, but still keep the same production schedule. Eventually, Sega of USA canned it, and there was no way that they could rewrite the engine and add all the features necessary and still have it on store shelves at the same time as the other ports. But Sega did like what they saw before they killed it. Imagine what could have been. Maybe a GBA port of Sonic Riders could have been really cool. There is official Sonic merch which depicts Sonic as a doctor. Perhaps you've all heard of Dr. Mario, but have you heard of Dr. Sonic? In 1992, a company by the name of Cherokee released this Sonic-themed merch. As you can see, it depicts Sonic as a doctor wearing a stethoscope, doing various doctor-like activities like whisking tails over to a hospital. I guess he broke his arm or something. Apparently, this original artwork was used for medical scrubs, so imagine if your doctor or dentist shows up with this Sonic merch. I think it'd be kind of cool. Some collectors over the years have gotten their hands on this merch. While it's not your traditional collector's merch, it's certainly something interesting. Issue 20 of French gaming magazine Megaforce features an unreleased prototype signpost from Sonic CD. Gaming magazines, they kind of feel like this lost art form, but if you take a look at this issue of this French gaming magazine called Megaforce, you will see that they featured a piece on Sonic CD. And if you look at one of the pictures all the way in the bottom right corner, what you will see is a picture of Sonic about to jump into a ring. But if you look at the goalpost sign, it features something that is different than what's featured in the actual game. If you take a look at this signpost right here, this is what made it into the final product of Sonic CD. So as you can see, very different than the signpost that was featured in the French magazine. People were eventually able to find this sprite in the files for Palm Tree Panic's level data from the 712 prototype, which uses an older revision of the data which contained the signpost. I'm going to be honest, I think that the older signpost from the beta actually looks better. Sonic CD features an animal that is not seen in the other classic Sonic games. One of the core central principles of the original Sonic the Hedgehog games is very simple. It's about rescuing animals that are trapped in robots by an evil scientist named Dr. Eggman. A lot of these animals make recurring appearances in the Sonic games, like Flicky, for example, is one of the most iconic ones. In Sonic CD, specifically in Metallic Madness Good Future only, you will see this very happy sheep jumping around, and this is the only classic Sonic game where this animal is even featured. This happy sheep is so rare, as a matter of fact, it only appears in one level in Sonic CD, and it does actually appear in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but those are the only games where it appears in general. There was a canceled Sonic game called Sonic Mars. Prior to the release of the Sega Saturn, there was a Sonic game in development called Sonic Mars. This was intended to release for the Sega 32X, but due to the fact that it was unpopular, they shifted development to a game called Sonic Extreme for the Sega Saturn. Clearly, that didn't work out much better, but we do know quite a bit about this game. We know that characters like Sally Acorn were allegedly going to be featured in it. Prototype demo footage of the game was also discovered too, and there's a ton of concept art as well as a script leaked out for this game, so quite a bit was known about it, but clearly the entire project was probably a failure from the get-go. Despite Sonic being famous for liking chili dogs, they've never been featured in a game up until Sonic Unleashed in 2008. In the present day 2026, fans of the Sonic series know at this point that his favorite food is chili dogs. But you'd be surprised to find out that this wasn't really a thing in any of the video games until Sonic Unleashed released in 2008. It's crazy because this is one of the things that he's kind of like synonymous with at this point. While they aren't actually prominent or featured in the story of the game, they are items that you can purchase in the shops. In terms of the actual story mode of a Sonic game, they aren't featured until the opening cutscene of Sonic and the Black Knight. The trope that Sonic loves chili dogs stem from the original Sonic cartoons that aired in the 90s, and they had some prominence in the Archie comics, but it's kind of a misconception that he's well known for chili dogs, as they weren't really featured in the games for like the first 20 years of the franchise. The Sonic X Leapster game gives Amy Rose a modern Genesis-styled sprite. In the early 2000s, the Sonic X anime was very popular, so what do you do to capitalize on that popularity? You license out an educational game to the Leapster system. I don't make the rules, that's what you're supposed to do. So all of the characters in this game had Genesis-styled sprites with some slight alterations from what it looks like. This game was pivotal in helping kids learn how to do math and do other educational tasks, like, I guess. I don't know. So Sonic wasn't the only character in this game. You'll also see characters like Knuckles and Tails, and their sprites are based off of the Sonic 3 sprites. So Amy Rose is featured in the game, and you'll notice that she doesn't have her classic Amy sprite. She has a modern Amy sprite. If you take a look right here, this is what she looks like, and it is a little bit jarring to see these old school Genesis-styled characters next to a modern version of Amy. But clearly, it makes sense to give her a new sprite because in the show, she doesn't look anything like her classic counterpart, unlike Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, which still have their recognizable design. So they probably did that to keep some continuity with the show. There were commercials for Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games that feature Jason Griffith and Charles Martinet voicing Mario and Sonic. The Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games series was the first crossover in-game between Sonic and Mario. Leading up to this game's release, obviously you had to do some marketing, and I think Nintendo and Sega definitely knocked it out of the park. They had two people dressed up as Mario and Sonic in lifelike costumes, conducting pre-game interviews, and it was a lot of back and forth banter between Mario and Sonic, and there's tons of commercials where one gets the advantage over the other. But in my opinion, the coolest thing about these commercials is the fact that the actual voice actors voice the characters in the commercials. Let's roll the clip.
Oh, we're gonna win it for sure. This Hedgehog team, they don't stand a chance.
Well, there you Our team is well trained and ready to take home gold. I don't see anything stopping us now.
That's it. I can't work like this.
Sonic, it's the last time.
Archie Comics was going to produce a basketball-themed Sonic comic. Slam Jam and Sonic was a planned one-shot intended to spin off the Sonic Archie comic series. It was going to be a crossover between Sega and the NBA, featuring the Supersonics as well as the Celtics. And the premise of the comic is that it would have tossed Sonic into the middle of the NBA championship game, and Sonic has to help the Seattle Supersonics win the game. This artwork was showed off by the infamous Ken Penders on Twitter, but ultimately the comic did end up being canceled. There are unused Supersonic sprites in Knuckles Chaotix. Knuckles Chaotix is a 1995 spin-off game that was released for the Sega 32X, and it's not a Sonic game, it's a Knuckles game. In this game, you take control of two different Sonic characters, and this game was the introduction of the Chaotix, and also our friend Mighty was playable. As a matter of fact, Sonic isn't even featured in this game except for the end credits where you see him and Tails, and for some reason Sonic has tan legs. But that did not stop them from putting a Supersonic sprite in the game. Inside of the Knuckles Chaotix ROM, there are unique sprites of Supersonic, which obviously weren't used in the final game. Also, a version of this sprite officially appeared for the first time on the Sonic Team website in 1996. My guess for why this is that at some point in time, Sonic and Tails were probably meant to be playable for this, considering the fact that the prototype for Knuckles Chaotix is called Sonic Crackers, which had a playable demo featuring Sonic and Tails. Maybe Sega wasn't confident in the fact that this game could be popular, so they didn't want to add Sonic's name to it because the Sega 32X was a failure, and Knuckles Chaotix certainly was a mixed bag. There's a segment in the Sonic cartoon where Tails smokes a cigarette. So Sonic Says was a series of segments in the adventures of the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon series, which were basically meant as short-form public service announcements to give kids like educational tips. For example, the dangers of smoking. In one of these segments, you actually see Tails pick up a cigarette and start smoking it, and I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Luckily, Sonic comes to save the day and take away the cigarette from Tails. But that is 90s cartoons for you. There's an official character called Future Sonic. Sonic and the Tales of Deception was a paperback book produced in March 6 of 2018, and it featured 3 different stories. One of these stories featured a character named Future Sonic, who won over all of Sonic's friends, but Sonic had suspicion that he was not actually him from the future, and it turned out that he was an android created by Dr. Eggman to wreak havoc. Sonic's original sidekick was not supposed to be Tails, it was supposed to be a turtle. This right here is Boomer the Turtle. He was designed to be Sonic's sidekick, and he had kind of a unique ability. The concept for this character was that Sonic could jump on top of him and he could go across water or spikes, but if he got hit, Sonic would have to help him and get him back upright. This concept was eventually scrapped in favor of Tails, although this mechanic would be pretty interesting for a future character. Boomer wasn't completely forgotten by Sega because for the Sonic the Hedgehog 30th anniversary special from IDW, he appeared as a background character. He kind of looks like a Koopa from Super Mario. Maybe they should bring him back. There's an official Sonic Spinball browser game. Sonic Spinball is a 2D side-scroller pinball-themed video game released in 1993 where Sonic has to travel through several levels by using pinball mechanics. This is probably one of my least favorite Sonic games of all time, but this isn't the only Sonic Spinball game. In October 13th of 2002, to promote the release of Sega Smash Pack for the Game Boy Advance, Candy Stand Games Portal had a browser-based Sonic Spinball game that featured Lifesavers branding. The game pretty much plays identical to the original Sonic Spinball for the Mega Drive, and at the end of the game, the player could submit their score to the Candy Stand website, and the players with a score in the top 150 in the original contest had a chance to win several prizes. This game was often reused for contests on the site until it was closed in 2004.